Hey everybody, today I want to talk about New Found Glory. They're a band that I have showcased on this channel many times, especially back in the day, and I've been listening to them a lot recently, and I've kind of gone over some of the stuff that I might have overlooked a bit in the last few years, and I just felt like it was a perfect time to do a tier list since I haven't yet. And it's been a little bit since my last tier list video. So let's just jump into it. I'm going to start from the beginning. I might miss some EPs here and there or some demos. Like really early, they have a demo called For All the Girls, I think it was. And then there was at least one other one that I'm blanking on the name of, but I'm not going to include those. So what I want to do now is just talk about their first real album, which was Nothing Gold Can Stay. This album for me personally was never a favorite of mine, mostly because of the production. The production is not great, and I mean it's very early in their career. It's essentially a foot in the door for the band, and it does show a lot of promise. I'll be honest, but pretty much everything about the recording process really throws me off. That's not to say there aren't some good songs on there, but for the most part, I still can't really rank it that high. So I'm going to put it in D category right now. Maybe I'll move it around. I'm not sure. But yeah, that feels good to me personally. So next is the Self-Titled album. Now, this is the first that I was introduced to New Found Glory more informally. Because when I was younger, my sister Chelsea got really into New Found Glory. Before I had even gotten into pop punk at all, she was obsessed with this album, and Jordan especially. She absolutely loved that album and that band, and we actually ended up going to see New Found Glory with a couple other bands, Finch, Something Corporate, and Further Seems Forever in '02. So I think Sticks and Stones had technically been out already at that point. But yeah, that was my first real introduction to this sort of pop punk genre. And I mean, it's really hard to find a bad thing to say about this album. There's really a lot of great songs, great lyrics. I mean, it's honestly one of the quintessential albums, in my opinion, for this band. I do think the recording, or maybe the performance on the album, could be a little tighter, but so many great songs. I do think it gets overshadowed a little bit by some of their other music. So that being the case, I'm going to put it in A tier. I think that it is really a great album, and I'm always listening to it. So nothing really bad to say about that one. I did forget, I skipped an album, but I do want to double back. The very first From the Screen to Your Stereo album. This one is their first covers album. I don't even know if you can really call it an album. It's more of an EP. It's a little on the shorter side. I really like the choices of songs. Everything from Gloria Love to My Heart Will Go On to some from the Goonies. There's some good songs on there. That being said, they're not the best recording. Again, I would say it's a little bit better than Nothing Gold Can Stay. That's mostly because the songs are already great, and I feel like the production and the recording is just a little bit better than Nothing Gold Can Stay. So I'm going to put it in C tier. I think it is a fun album, although not really quite up to par to most of their catalog. But I do think it's a little bit better than Nothing Gold Can Stay. So from there, we went to the self-titled album. Now we're going to go to Sticks and Stones. Sticks and Stones was the first album of theirs that I really focused on. At that point, I was starting to listen to bands like Sum 41 and Blink-182, and like I said, my sister was really into New Found Glory, and while I didn't really, check out the previous albums too much, Sticks and Stones was really the album that I gave my full attention to. So I remember I went into her room. I don't even think she was home. I borrowed the CD and threw it on my Walkman or whatever it was at the time and checked it out, and I thought it was great. I mean, the guitars sound perfect. There's some great riffs in there. They do a lot of great breakdowns, the vocals, the lyrics. I mean, it was just the perfect album at the time. And this album, I think, is easily in the top 5 or maybe even top 3 most important pop punk albums of all time. I mean, what pop punk fan has not listened to and fell in love with this album? I mean, let's be real. It is honestly perfect, and I got nothing bad to say about it. It is truly one of the best, and I have to put it in S tier. It really is as good as it gets. So from there, they took a bit of a turn with Catalyst. Catalyst was a very exciting album for me. It had some darker vibes to it. It had some new ideas, and they definitely tried some things they hadn't tried before. And this was the first album for me to come out when I was already a fan. So me, my cousin, a bunch of my friends were very, very excited for this album. And I remember the first time we heard All Downhill From Here, which I'm pretty sure was the first single, instantly hooked. I thought it was absolutely great. From there, there was Failure's Not Flattering was another single. I Don't Want to Know was a single, which was definitely one of those songs where they were trying some new things. It was more of a ballad, but another good song. I mean, this whole album is full of great songs, and here's a fun bit of trivia. My dad even loves this album. It's one of his absolute favorite albums, and I remember getting him hooked on this one big time back in the day. This would have been like 2004 or so, and just great. It's really, really hard for me to put this anywhere other than S. I think that most people would agree with me. I could see it maybe going in A tier, but I'm going to put it in S, but I am going to put it behind Sticks and Stones because I don't think it's quite as good as Sticks and Stones. But I think it is every bit as deserving to be up there. So from there, what is after that? Oh, Coming Home. Coming Home is a very interesting album, and from what I remember, New Found Glory had gotten signed to a new label. I believe it was Geffen, who were a much bigger record label and much more like radio friendly, and I'm sure that they put some pressure on New Found Glory to go a little bit more mainstream, to do a little bit less of the pop punk and a little bit more of, the alt rock kind of thing. A little bit sappier, a little bit more lovey. But man, I am one of those people that absolutely love this album. I don't necessarily want another album like this out of them because this one was so good, and I don't think that they could do another one like this quite as well as they did. I mean, there's so many good songs on this album, and it was at a time when I was already kind of listening to like the softer side of pop punk, I guess you could say. I was really into like Reliant K. I was into May a lot, MAE. Other bands like that. So I was definitely gravitating towards that lighter side of the genre at the time. And there's so many great songs on there. Hold My Hand is one of my favorites. On My Mind is an incredible song. There's so many good ones. So I personally have to put this in A tier. I think it really is a great album. And I think that it's probably their most divisive album ever. And for good reason. I totally understand if some people don't like it. It really was a big departure for them. And I can see why. I mean, they were doing what they had to do at the time. But I really think they pulled it off. I really do. From there, what is their next one chronologically? Let me see. Glory albums. I think I know which one it is, but I'm just going to double check. So Coming Home was 2006. Yeah, so it was From the Screen to Your Stereo 2. And this one, I feel, was miles ahead of the first one. I don't know if I could say the song selection is necessarily better than the first one, but the production is much better. Much, much, much better. And I didn't mention this before, but not only are they cover songs, but they're cover songs that are known for being movie songs. Like, for example, Iris. They did Goo Goo Dolls' Iris, and they did a great version of it too. That song was from City of Angels. Obviously, it was also known for just being one of their songs, but they do Don't You Forget About Me from Breakfast Club, and there's a bunch of other ones. Kiss Me, Love Fool, The King of Wishful Thinking. I think that one might have been from Pretty Woman. Am I thinking that right? I forget. But great songs. Really, really great songs, and super fun. They have a lot of guest vocalists on that album too. I know Max Bemis is on there. The guy from Dashboard Confessional, I'm pretty sure, is in there somewhere. There's a good amount of people, so it's pretty cool. I think it's a really, really solid album, and again, I feel like they just do such a great job of incorporating their own sound into already great songs, and they do it really well. I really have to give it to them. I think their cover albums are definitely some of their best. They really are. And they're just fun, you know? It's a great reimagining of already great songs. So I'm going to put that also in A tier, but I'm going to put it behind Coming Home. So right now I have in A tier, I have the Self-Titled album is probably the highest in A tier, and I put Coming Home right behind that one. And then I'm going to put From the Screen to Your Stereo 2 right behind that one. From there, Tip of the Iceberg is the next year. So that one's pretty cool. That one's it's kind of like a split where it's like some heavier kind of Newfound Glory songs split with what they called International Heroes of Hardcore. And that second half is I'm pretty sure all sung by Chad, and it's basically like his ode to hardcore music, like Madball and that sort of stuff, which he's really into. And I think it's cool. It's different. I really do like um, the tip of the iceberg side. I listen to that more than I listen to the other stuff, but I think they do it really well. That being said, I mean, I don't think it really lives up to um, maybe like the self-titled or coming home even. So I'm going to put it in B tier right now. It is good, but I'd say it's, not quite to that level. After that, what is after that one? So that was 2008. 2009, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, 2009 is Not Without a Fight. So this one, from what I remember, it was produced by Mark Hoppus. I was pretty sure it was. I don't necessarily think the production is anything to really speak upon. I mean, it's pretty standard for pop punk around that time. But what you really got to talk about here are just the songs in general. I feel like it was a great return to form for them, after Coming Home, which was very different, very soft, very light. And then they did the covers album, and then they did the EP, the hardcore EP. I think this was really what they needed to do. Um, you know, Listen to Your Friends is still one of my favorite songs of theirs. Don't Let Her Pull You Down. Tangled Up is a great song. That one actually has Hayley Williams in there. You can just barely hear her in the choruses. But I kind of like that it's not like right in your face. I feel like she really blended well with Jordan. And just lots of great riffs. Truck Stop Blues, 47, so many good songs. So I'm going to put this one up in A tier. And frankly, I do think it is slightly better than the self-titled album. So it is now officially number one in A tier. I think it's a great album. Really, really great album. Okay, so after Not Without a Fight, which one do we have? Not Without a Fight. Radio Surgery. Radio Surgery, I feel like, was along the same lines as Not Without a Fight, but I just don't think it's as strong of an album front to back. There's a couple songs on there that I just don't find to be all that strong. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great songs on this album. Give me the track list, man. Come on, where are we going? I really like the title track. I really like Drill It in My Brain. I'm Not the One. Summer Fling Don't Mean a Thing. Map of Your Body is a great song, but songs like Trainwreck and Dumped, don't really care about those ones very much, I'll be honest. And then there's actually a deluxe version of this album, and all of those songs are great. I really do like those ones. Over Again is great. Sadness is great. And they even do a Ramones cover, which is pretty cool. So I have to put this one in B tier just because I feel like it's not quite up to the level of A, but it's pretty solid. I have no problem listening to this album, but there are a couple stinkers on there. From there, what do we have from there? I could mention, I don't really need to mention, but I could mention, what is it called? The Kill It Live album. It's a live album, but it does have 3 new songs on there. And it does have my favorite New Found Glory song on it called Connect the Dots. Love that song. Really, really great. But the live album itself, I mean, they're not necessarily a band that I want to listen to live. They were a very fun band to see live. They're the band that I've seen live more times than any band. But I don't necessarily want to listen to a live recording, you know, and that goes for most bands for me. I'm more of a studio listener, but I like to watch the live performances. So just an honorable mention there. Love those 3 new songs. Really, really good. From there is Mania, which is a Ramones cover EP. Now, I'm not the biggest Ramones fan, I'll be completely honest, but they do it well. You know, there's obviously a lot of influence from them, and I thought that they did the songs pretty well. I thought it was fun. I don't listen to it all that often, but yeah, I think it's cool. Just because it's not really a very important EP. It's not super special to me personally, just because I'm not like the biggest Ramones fan. But I'll put it in B tier just because, you know, it's pretty solid. From there has got to be Resurrection. Resurrection was the beginning of the end for New Found Glory for me. Now, there was a lot going on with the band. There were lineup changes, and I feel like they were kind of having a bit of an identity crisis. They had to learn how to do things a little bit differently. And I feel like with Resurrection, they just struggled. And it's not necessarily just the lyrics. It's not necessarily, you know, the songs themselves, but like a lot of the riffs, which, you know, Chad was always known for writing pretty solid riffs. They are very uninspired in this album. The title track, is it the title track? Or no, Selfless. It's the intro. It was the first single, I believe. Yeah, Selfless was the first single. I did not like that song. Did not like it at all. I don't know. I really wasn't a fan. It's just such a boring riff. Such a very uninspired riff. There's some other ones on here that are also just very simple, very repetitive, and just uninteresting. You know, as a guitar player, this album just felt off to me, you know, because I knew how to play almost all the other songs, you know, from doing covers over the years, and just this album just did not feel right to me. It's like they were kind of doing almost the hardcore kind of edge a little bit, like they were trying like a little bit harder stuff, but it wasn't a fun album. It wasn't a necessarily well-produced album, I don't think. I don't like the guitar sound or anything like that, and I don't know. It was just boring to me. It's probably my least favorite New Found Glory album, and honestly, I'm going to have to put it in the D tier because it's just completely forgettable. And I mean, even like Vicious Love, like I love Hayley Williams, don't get me wrong, but even she couldn't save that song. I just don't think it's that good. I do think it's cool that they have Anthony Ranieri on one of the songs. They have Brandon from Turnstile on one of the songs. So that's pretty cool. Really boring album. And this one, I mean, I'm looking at the ratings, like even Absolute Punk gave it a 4 out of 10. That sounds about right to me. I mean, there were some good scores on here. I won't lie, but I don't know. At this point, I was kind of soured on the band, and I was just like looking for other things. I was like, if this is the way that New Found Glory is going to go, then I don't know if I'm necessarily along for the ride. You know what I mean? So after that one, it was a few years before a new album came out. 2017, Makes Me Sick came out. Now, I think I might have done a quick review of this album along with a couple other albums. I think I did a video years ago where I talked about that one and then like maybe a new Paramore album and like a couple others or something. I don't quite remember. And I feel like I was fairly charitable to Makes Me Sick, but here's how I feel about it right now. There's more going on for this album, I think, than Resurrection. That being said, there's some odd stuff here. Like, there's a song, I think it's The Sound of Two Voices, that just sounds like a Caribbean song. And it's very out of left field, very, very surprising. And I don't hate it, but I'm just like, why is this here? You know, it just does absolutely nothing for me. This one again does have a deluxe version. I guess they call it Makes Me Sick Again. And those songs that they added don't necessarily do all that much for me either. They were fairly forgettable, but I didn't just downright dislike most of it like I did with Resurrection. So I'm gonna give it a C, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a C, but I'm gonna put it behind From the Screen to Your Stereo one, just because I think they just chose so many good songs. But yeah, I mean, Makes Me Sick was a little bit better, so it gave me a little bit of hope. But at that point, I was still kind of like, what is this band doing? Like, I'm just confused now. There was a lot of synth in there, which I'm fine with. I like synth, but when you've already done so many albums without it, it just felt weird at that point to keep it there or to add it. I don't know. It wasn't for me personally. And even now, I did just give it a re-listen, or at least I skimmed most of it, and it was just not great. So after that one, they came out with From the Screen to Your Stereo 3. And I think this album's pretty good. I'll be honest. This was the first thing in, 5 years where I was pretty okay with what was going on. Let me see what the track list was. I know they do Eye of the Tiger, which was great. I'm like, that song's already good, but I feel like their version of it is even better. I really like the rhythm change that they brought to it. It's more like more chugging, like more, it's clearly faster and it's just got a little bit more going on. I do like it a lot. Power of Love was another great one that I really liked from Back to the Future. These songs in general don't necessarily do too much for me. Not like the second From the Screen to Your Stereo. I mean, they got 1,000 Years. They have This Is Me and Let It Go. I don't really care about those songs all that much. They do a good job on these songs. The production is great. The performance is great. Cups. I don't care about the Cups song. I'm sorry. I just don't. Accidentally in Love was pretty good. I think that one was from Shrek, I want to say. I don't remember. But overall, not bad. But I don't think it really holds a candle to the second one that they did. So I'm going to put that in B tier just because what they did do was pretty solid. I think the song choices could have been a little bit more interesting for me, but that's just my bias personally. From there, we are going to go, let me see. All right. This album, Forever and Ever Times Infinity, this was the whole reason why I wanted to make this video, because I don't know how much I've talked about this album. Maybe I've talked about it a little bit in like some of my Instagram Q&As, or Maybe I've mentioned it in a video here and there. I don't really remember. And frankly, I don't remember too much of my thoughts on the album when it first came out. I can't believe it came out already that long ago. It was 4 years ago, I think it said. And yeah, June 2020. But for whatever reason, I decided to, about a week ago, to give it another listen. And I actually started with the deluxe version. So it was a song called Backseat that I turned on, and I was like, whoa, this like legit sounds like old New Found Glory to me. And I don't say that lightly at all. And I just kept going down the list of the deluxe edition, and I was like, what have I been missing? Like, I thought it was solid, like really, really solid. So naturally, like I went back and I started going through the regular version of the album, and I was really impressed. I felt like the guitars felt like they used to. They felt inspired again. These are some of the best riffs I feel like Chad has ever written, clearly. And I feel like I've been missing out, for 4 years. Maybe I just wasn't ready for this album 4 years ago. I don't know. But I'm ready for it now, and I'm really happy about it. So I'm pretty pumped to get out there and do a couple covers of these songs, because I thought they were really good. There was a couple here that I thought weren't fantastic. Shook by Your Shaved Head wasn't one of my favorites. Scarier Than Jason Voorhees at a Campfire wasn't one of my favorites, but there was a lot of good ones in here. Birthday Song, Not Really was pretty cool. Slipping Away was surprising at being over 5 minutes long. You don't see that very often with them. But there was a lot of good stuff in here. So originally I had it put in B tier, but when I'm talking about it now, I feel like I have to put it in A tier. So right now I'm going to put it between Coming Home and From the Screen to Your Stereo Part 2. I think it's the best album they've put out in, well, at that point, it was 2020. So we'll say, I don't know, 8 years, or no, like 10 years, give or take, 10 or 11 years, because I have it above Radio Surgery. So, yeah, I think it's really good. I'm really surprised. I don't know. I totally blew it on that one. I'll be completely honest. So from here, there were a couple like little releases. Maybe not little, but they did an album called December's Here, which from what I've gathered is just a full album of original Christmas songs, which I thought was really cool. I'm not really much of a Christmas music kind of guy, but I'm way more on board with the fact that these are, as far as I can tell, original songs, and they're not just covering the same Christmas songs that everybody is doing. I don't need another version of All I Want for Christmas Is You, you know what I mean? And then the songs that I did listen to, they sounded great. They sounded like, happy holiday Christmas songs. So I thought that was really cool. Not really my thing most times, in most cases. So I'm going to put it just at the back of B tier right now. But yeah, it's cool. It's worth checking out if you haven't. If you like Christmas music and, that's your thing, I think it's definitely worth checking out. So from here, I believe there's one more to talk about. I don't think I've missed anything. There was a couple other like little EPs or splits that I could have talked about, like Swiss Army Bromance. They covered a Dashboard Confessional song. They did a Christmas EP like 2012. I actually owned that on cassette for a little while. But yeah, not really worth talking about in my opinion. But last year they came out with an album called Make the Most of It. And this one is all acoustic from what I've seen. And they've got, let's see, 7 new acoustic songs. And then it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, another 7 acoustic live versions of some older songs, like some older hits. And I just want to say that I feel like the first half of the album is really solid. The production is really great. The acoustic guitars sound great. And I think it would be a really solid EP if it was just those 7 songs. The live tracks are pretty rough. I feel like Jordan's vocals just sound awful. I mean, there's a ton of reverb on his vocals, and maybe that's just the way that they recorded it. I don't know. But it sounds way different compared to the instrumental section. It just sounds like out of place almost. And his singing just isn't that strong live anymore. It never really was. But overall, the obvious focus of these songs are the newer originals, the first 7 or 8 there. And I think they're really strong. I really do. So with all that combined, I'm just going to put it in B tier, and I'm just going to slide it in the back of B tier again behind December's here. So I believe that's it. I don't think I've missed anything really. And I think it's a pretty solid list. Yeah. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you want me to do a tier list for any other band, and I'll be sure to do it. So thank you for watching. Leave me requests, like I said, if you have any, and I will be back with you guys shortly, I'm sure. See you later.